for years, people like me have been saying that the climate science is not as settled as the activists like to say, any more than the pandemic science is settled. And while all of us want to do the right thing by the environment, there's just no way we should be damaging our economy in an endless quest to reduce emissions, particularly when Australia's actual contribution gets measured against outcomes overseas. And for our troubles, rather than have a fair income debate, the real push from the activists has been to shut down people like me and others. And I have to say, when hasn't science been open to a debate? Why don't they want the debate? One of the key drivers of science, after all, has always been discovery and fact-finding. So if activists are so sure and the organs of the left are so sure they're right, why are they scared of scrutiny? Why are they scared of being judged on real outcomes rather than just promises? In my view, a good part of the reason why they want to shut the debate down is to limit information to voters. To date, whenever voters have been asked to decide between a race to cut emissions and preserving prosperity, as they were in 2013 and again at last year's election, they've always put cost of living before climate zealotry. So if you want to change things here, you've got to move the voters. And closing down the debate, as well as reprogramming our children, is a good place to start, isn't it? This is an important discussion to have tonight for two reasons. The first is that today, yet another environmental warrior has come clean on the lies being told inside the climate change movement. My colleague Chris Kenny had first part of a two-part interview, and I hope you watched it, more tomorrow. The second reason I want to discuss this tonight is Australia's massive increase in its military strike capability. This is such a salient reminder, isn't it, that everything a nation does has to be paid for. You can't have a strong military without a strong economy to sustain it, and you can't have a strong economy if too many people are sold the lie that capitalism is killing the planet. Earlier this year, there was Michael Moore's brave film, Planet of the Humans, exposing as fraudulent the claim that wind and solar can power the planet and laying bare the massive environmental damage being done by cutting down our forests to generate power and sanitising it all by calling it biomass. Well, Moore, of course, he has been cancelled, his film at least for some time being. And today's other bolt of realism is Michael Schellenberger's new book, Apocalypse Never, debunking the whole extinction rebellion as a complete fantasy that the environmental movement has gone along with and become some kind of green religious cult. Now, Schellenberger smashes all the myths. The world isn't going to end, he says, in 12 years' time. The Amazon is not the lungs of the world. Veganism isn't going to save the planet. Climate change is not making natural disasters worse. We don't need to stop burning coal anytime soon. And the last thing we should be doing is impoverishing ourselves, because that won't help the environment one little bit. This is seismic stuff, because Schellenberger is a serious environmentalist, previously relied on by the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. This is an insider coming clean who says that for him, the final straw that caused him to speak out against this green doomsday cult after years of science was the Greta Thunberg craze and a fifth of British children reporting that they had nightmares about the end of the world. Schellenberger hopes that the experience of an actual crisis that's really killing people like this current pandemic, will put this confected crisis into better perspective and get the green movement to focus once more on the really pressing environmental issues like habitat destruction and water quality. Well, I agree with Schellenberger. I hope this is the outcome. But the same factors that cowed him for years, like a reluctance to break ranks, to lose friends, to put the funding gravy train at risk, those factors are still at work. Will all the governments that have solemnly assured voters that climate change is the most pressing crisis the world's seen, and will all the rent-seeking businesses chasing subsidies and activist applause, will they all now admit it's a long way from being the crisis they've sold it as? No, they won't. Because to admit that they were pandering to green prejudice would destroy their credibility. But each time individuals like Schellenberger and more face up to the uncomfortable, inconvenient truth, it becomes easier for others. For too long, Labor MPs who should have been protecting workers' jobs have been fretting over Greens' preferences, and Liberal MPs who should have been strengthening the economy have been pandering to the moral vanity of voters in seats like Wentworth, as insulated as those electors are from the cost of these policies. To date, no elite has wanted to be accused of denying the science, even though the main driver of climate change science has always been the politics. At the very least, as a country post-COVID-19 and the truth-telling of people like Schellenberger, Australia should make no more emissions reduction commitments. And there should be no more permanent closures of coal-fired power stations in the absence of proper baseload replacement power. After all, what's the point of asking people to be brave and to tell the truth if when they do, we try and bury them and ignore what they're saying? Schellenberger's book, Apocalypse Never, is an important book. It should be read by anyone who wants to understand how truths can be distorted and issues hijacked and public policy warped for political gain. And it should be on the desk, I tell you, of everyone in Canberra, politician and bureaucrat, in boardrooms around the country as well.